What's up, guys? Candace Owens was just on Piers Morgan, and she spread a lot of lies and a lot of hatred against Israel. And let's take a watch. Let's take a look, and I'll interrupt when appropriate.
Well, what I've been having trouble is all of the people that are pro-Israel and say it's not a genocide won't tell me what is a genocide. What percentage of a population has to be killed before we can use the word genocide? It's a funny little thing.
The definition of a genocide is the deliberate killing of a nation or ethnic group that with the intent of destroying that people or group. So it's pretty simple. The definition is on Google. She can just Google it. It's not confusing at all.
They won't tell you. They won't tell you what constitutes genocide. So I would like a clear understanding of how many Palestinians have to die before we are allowed to term it a genocide. All of the experts can't agree on what a genocide actually is, but they love to float around the word on virtually every other issue. You know, I had Rabbi Barclay on my show, on one of my last shows when I was on the Daily Wire, and I asked him that question pointedly: what is genocide? Let us know, experts, what percentage of the population of Palestinians has to be killed before we are allowed to say that it's genocide. I
think that this is another problem with the sort of Western media. They're obsessed with proportionality. And so she looks at it like, oh, you know, how many people have to be killed? Nobody has to be killed. At the end of the day, it all comes down to just war or not a just war. If it's a just war, then you have to persecute it and basically go until you're victorious, until your goals are achieved, until Hamas is destroyed. And if it's not a just war, then you shouldn't be persecuting it. You know, so it's not like they killed 1,200 of our people and now we're trying to get them back. This isn't getting them back. This is about future security concerns in Hamas, getting back our hostages, and essentially just the betterment of the region by, you know, ridding Hamas from the face of this earth.
Can tell you is I am completely uncomfortable and utterly against the amount of Palestinian innocent lives that have been lost in this conflict, particularly children. And any person who is fearful of stating that the death of innocent children has been utterly unacceptable is a coward.
I mean, listen, I completely agree, but do you personally think it constitutes genocide, which is the deliberate...
What I'm saying to you is I can tell you what on my show.
Yeah.
What is the number?
No, I understand.
I take umbrage at that when people say innocent civilians. They are not innocent in the fact that they voted in Hamas. They also support Hamas in a recent poll. I think like maybe 93% support Hamas. They're very pro-Hamas. You know, they're openly pro-Hamas. And not only that, even children, even 16-year-olds and even 15-year-olds and even 14-year-olds, if they're holding a gun at you, they're not innocent. You know, they pose a threat to your life. And every single one of those people celebrated 9/11. They celebrated October 7th. At the end of the day, that's not innocence. Now, if you want to say that there are children, you can say that. There are a lot of children that have been brainwashed and maybe can be de-radicalized. And I'm not saying that we should totally, you know, ethnically cleanse or, you know, do anything like that. But there is a difference between innocent Israeli civilians and people that literally in a split second, if they had the chance, would destroy Israel. So they're very clear in their wording. They want Israel gone. They're not exactly innocent.
What is the official number? That's it. I mean, somebody tell me, and I'll give you an answer.
Well, I don't think there is a
try
specific...
it. Try it when you have.
Well, it's not about a number.
People on both sides of the debate on.
Yeah, but it's not.
No. What do you mean it's not a number?
Here's my answer.
And do they give you an answer?
Well, no, because here's the point. It's not about specific numbers. It's about an intent.
But it has to be.
Well, no, it's not. It's about an intent to eradicate.
That's not true, Piers, because in America they say that Native Americans, it was a genocide committed by white men. This is what they say, right?
No, but I'm talking.
Okay, so basically she's giving an example in which the genocide term was wrongly used, in her opinion, and therefore it's not exactly so. By saying that genocide term at one point was wrongly used does not mean that the term genocide does not have a definition. There is a definition of genocide, and it is the intentional killing of a people or ethnic group with the intent of destroying them. Now, in that case, it might have been wrongly used. It does not mean that in Gaza, it's also a genocide, because in one point it was wrongly used. It also is going to be wrongly used here. It has a literal definition that everyone agrees upon.
Do you agree with that?
I'm talking about what the definition of a genocide is.
But what I'm telling you is that that would be incorrect, because the majority of Native Americans died from smallpox. It was accidental. Some 90% of the Native Americans that lived here died from smallpox, and it's considered a genocide.
No, I understand. I'm telling you what the definition of genocide is, which is not about a specific number in any circumstance. It's about an intent to target and eradicate a whole people based on their ethnicity.
I'm disputing that by telling you that they legally say within America.
Legally, I think anyone can legally say anything, so I don't know what her point here is. But again, by saying that at one point they wrongly used the term genocide does not mean that genocide does not have a definition, and does not mean that you can loop in and wrongly term what Israel is doing in Gaza also a genocide by that same logic.
That Native Americans, a genocide was committed against Native Americans. Factually speaking, 90% of them, 90 to 93% of them died from smallpox. So it was actually an epidemic, right? So is the definition shifting? Because it is my understanding from Rabbi Barclay that the definition of anti-Semitism shifts. So maybe the definition of genocide has shifted, but we are also taught that genocide
let me read you the
in
exact
school.
Let me read you the exact.
When people say the anti-Semitism shifts, it's not really. Anti-Semitism means Jew hatred, people that hate Jews. I don't think that that shifts. I think that the way that people hate Jews shifts. So, for example, in the Middle Ages, when Jews were really the money lenders, they were basically, attacked for their being greedy and, for basically big noses and things like that. Later on, they were considered during Nazi Germany to be extremely weak and, weakening the society, a disease to the society, too tolerant in some ways. So the way people hate Jews changes, not the actual fact that anti-Semitism means people or the act of hating Jews.
Wording and see whether you think it applies to. Well, let me read you the example. Definition of genocide from the Oxford English Dictionary: the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. So by that definition, do you believe that is what's happening to the Palestinian people and it's being perpetrated by Israel?
Well, I would say is that Israel has proven in the past that they can be very specific when they want to get somebody out, whether that's a hostage or any other certain military operation. And what I am seeing happening, forgetting the specific language of a genocide, is something that I'm using my platform to speak out against, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me what the media calls me. I've had every headline. I do not believe that they are being careful in what they are doing. I think it has been it seems to me that the destruction of the hospitals and the schools and of the UN buildings. Would you say, Piers, that you believe that's unintentional?
So again, I think she's deflecting here. And I also think that when you go from, Israel is committing a genocide to, Israel is just not being careful, now that's a big freaking difference. If you're going to tell me Israel isn't exactly being careful, you can have a conversation about that. That's in the realm of possibility that they're not being perfectly careful, although the statistics show that Israel has about a 1 to 1.5 or 1 to 2 civilian to combatant ratio. 2 to 1 civilian to combatant ratio. So it's really doing unbelievably well in terms of civilian deaths compared to combatants. The general war is like 9 to 1. In the UN, it's like 9 civilians to 1 combatant. So for urban warfare, they're doing unbelievably well. But again, this whole idea that Israel is committing a genocide is what the Nazis did, and where they basically took millions of Jews, herded them into camps, and killed them by starvation, just by overworking them, shooting them in the back of the head. That's a genocide. What you're talking about, when you talk about, just not being careful, you can't by mistake commit a genocide.
I do not believe Israel's waging genocide. I think that...
Do you believe, but I'm asking you, do you believe that the targeting, going, room to room in the hospitals
is intentional? Well, no, I'll be clear with you. I can answer the question. I have said repeatedly in the last few weeks and months that I think the proportionality of Israel's response is now unacceptable. And particularly since they decided to go into Rafah, a refugee camp that they set up, to then target Hamas in the middle of a refugee camp where you're bound to kill so many innocent civilians in the process, I think is unacceptable. But I'm just curious, given that you tweeted about genocide and no government ever has a right to do it, whether by your calculation from that definition, what Israel is doing is deliberately killing a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group.
Yeah, well, what I can say to you, again, because these definitions shift, I don't think we need to focus on the word, because I'm telling you what I believe. And my belief is that they are not being careful whatsoever. My belief is that there has been too much loss of Palestinian life.
But that's different to genocide, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but okay, that's fine. We don't need to. That's what I'm saying. I don't know why you're like obsessing over this one word. It doesn't matter.
Well, because you tweeted about genocide.
You told me.
I'm only trying to clear up.
It's about Brian Mast. So you're.
To clarify, her tweet was, any government that constitutes genocide should be deplorable. So basically, she is saying that Israel was committing genocide. She always likes to sort of hint at things and not explicitly say them. Like, for example, she'll talk about the Holocaust and how the Jews were, sort of these people that were extremely progressive liberals and, had transgender ideology, things like that. And she won't say that she totally is anti-Semitic and she totally that all Jews are bad. But she'll say like, oh, the Jews did this, the Jews did that, the Jews run Hollywood. But she won't exactly say that. She'll skew it a little bit so that you know what she's saying, but you'll never be able to catch her on her actual anti-Semitism that she keeps just beneath the surface.
You're harping on this issue. There's a lot more topics we should talk about. I'm being very clear in how I feel about this issue. The Israeli government is not being careful in how they're dealing with this. I agree with you that the amount of death has been completely unacceptable. When I tweeted that was back in November. So we're talking way more lives that have been lost. And that tweet was about Brian Mast. So
I get it. No, here's my reason.
Never imagined the amount of dead Palestinian children that I would see on my X feed since then.
It's horrific.
It's heartbreaking to me as a mother. It's horrific to me that the media seems almost complicit in the dehumanization of Palestinians. And I will not be on that side, because at the end of the day, the hit pieces, the name calling, the anti-Semitism, the psychopathic language that seems to be coming out of people means nothing. And I want to make sure everybody knows this, right? At the end of the day, you are going to have to account to God for the things that you allowed, for the things that you were complicit in, and for the things that you did not have enough courage to state.
Okay.
The amount of death of Palestinian children has been unacceptable, full stop.
Okay.
Bibi Netanyahu, in my view, should not be given an invitation to Congress. I think it's unacceptable.
I agree.
Unacceptable.
I don't
and
think
to be clear, for whatever the reason,
he shouldn't be leader
when it
Israel.
comes to the topic of Israel, it does seem that journalists are fearful to critique it.
Okay, so here is exactly where I'm talking about, where she'll not exactly say that Jews are in control and controlling the whole world, but she'll say it with a little bit of a twist, and you basically have to wonder what she thinks, but you can... So here's a great example of where she won't exactly say that she hates Jews and that Jews control everything, but she'll say, like, oh, Israel, you can't talk about Israel. You can't talk about the Holocaust. You can't talk about all these things. And she's implying that you can't talk about that stuff because Jews control all these institutions.
Israel.
Well, I'm not
now,
at all.
Why is that?
So...
Because I would say, Piers, that you too. You seem a little fearful to critique Israel and to want to always seem that you're coming across a little bit understanding of everything they're doing. What is it that makes journalists, corporate journalists,
okay, let me respond.
Fearful of saying, hey, Israel has done a ton of things that have been very wrong?
Yes, and I have said they're wrong. I think that
maybe because they haven't done a ton of things that are very wrong, and they're dealing with a genocidal threat in Hamas, and really all the Palestinians want them all gone. So maybe it's because they haven't really done anything wrong.
Netanyahu should go. I think half of that cabinet should go, because some of them have definitely been using genocidal language. I think a lot of what Israel's been doing in the last few weeks is completely unacceptable. But ultimately, I also, from the start of this conflict, believe that Israel not only had a right to defend itself after the terror attack on October the 7th, but a fundamental duty to its people. And here's where I'm just curious about your tweeting through this procedure, this whole war, because on October the 7th, you didn't tweet anything. You didn't tweet anything on October the 8th. And October the 9th, you tweeted, so much world peace ever since we got the orange man out of office. So glad the adults are back in charge. A lot of people say, well, if you care this much about innocent people being killed, why didn't you say anything when 1,200 people were massacred to death in the most brutal, barbaric manner in this awful terror attack by Hamas, and nearly 7,000 more were wounded, some of them catastrophically and irreparably? Why did that not compel you to say anything?
Well, first and foremost, Israel's a foreign country, so typically I talk about topics that have to do with America. Secondly, you're only...
Okay, that is such bullshit. She goes from talking about how she cares about the Palestinians, how she's a mother, and all the scenes and all this bullcrap, and then she goes ahead and says, "Oh, you know, when innocent Israelis die, you know, it doesn't really matter because it's not, you know, it's not near me, and you know, I only talk about America." So which is it? Either you care about innocent lives or you don't care about innocent lives, and that's really the precursor to all of this. Is like, you ask people what they tweeted on October 7th. You ask people, you know, what they said on October 7th, and you see that they don't really care about Gaza. They only care about Gaza because of their anti-Semitism, because they hate Jews. And that's why there wasn't the same response after October 7th. There wasn't the same outpouring of, oh, you know, all eyes on Israel.
Quoting my Twitter feed. I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. I also had a daily podcast in which I did respond directly about what happened and called the events horrific. Multiple times, said what Hamas did was absolutely horrific. So you're using a snapshot of my Twitter feed where you're acknowledging that I didn't tweet for days to suggest that I didn't have anything to say about what had happened. Now, to be clear, I am consistent on all matters.
Okay, so if she's going to say that she didn't say anything on Twitter, she says something on other platforms. Your Twitter is your official statement. Everyone knows this. You know, you don't make official statements on Instagram. You make, I would say, 90% of people in news will make their big statements on X. So when they're talking about a big news topic, they'll talk about it on X. They're not going to go ahead and, you know, post an Instagram story. It's mainly going to be on X. So, okay, you know, it's beautiful that she sort of acknowledged it, but at the end of the day, Twitter is the place where you should be acknowledging it. So it isn't unfair of Piers to, you know, sort of bring that up.
I do not want America involved whatsoever in anything that is happening in Israel. I don't want my dollars sent over to Israel. We should not be supporting Israel. Obviously, Thomas Massey has done a lot of work showing how it doesn't even make economic sense that we have so much debt and yet we're sending money over to support Israel. And the biggest issue, by the way, that I have with Israel in talking about them being above reproach is the fact that they are supplying the arms to murder Christians.
This is utter bullshit. So when you're going to talk about Israel killing Christians, Israel is the most tolerant most tolerant country in the entire region by far, not even close. They tolerate Christians, Arabs, whatever you want to be, Druze, Muslims, all this stuff, right? And all the other Muslim countries, if you walked into Gaza, you're a Christian. There's a good chance. You walked into Bethlehem, you're a Christian. There's a good chance they'll just kill you. You know, in a lot of these Muslim countries, you look at the ethnic cleansing of not just Jews, but a lot of Christians. You look at Egypt, Coptic Christians were just like decimated out of Egypt. So when you're going to talk about human rights in these places and the way people persecute Christians, if you talk about Israel, that's anti-Semitism, because you're excluding the fact that all these other countries are way, way worse, and Israel is extremely tolerant towards Christians.
Okay. In Armenia, the oldest Christian country in the world, and yet nobody talks about that. For whatever reason, it seems to be the circumstance that when Jewish people die in Israel, it's wall-to-wall coverage. But when Christians die all over the world, nobody talks about it. Everyone wants to correlate everything to World War II. Everyone wants to talk about Adolf Hitler, and rightfully so, he was a horrific person. But nobody wants to talk about Henryk Yagoda.
Nobody wants to talk about Adolf Hitler. You're the only one talking about Adolf Hitler.
right? Nobody wants to talk about the Bolsheviks. Nobody wants to talk about the Christian Holocaust. I am tired of the media, exhausted of the media not speaking about what is happening to Christians all around the world.
Now, I do agree that Christians, especially white Christians, are getting under a lot of persecution in recent years, and it is becoming sort of allowed to attack Christians in general. That is a tragedy and that is terrible, but negating one person's tragedy by saying, oh, you didn't acknowledge mine, is not going anywhere. You're basically just saying she's blaming the Jews for the fact that Christian deaths weren't covered. Like the Jews are in control of it in some manner. She has a lot of hatred towards Jews, obviously.
And it is especially horrific while at the exact same time that it is happening, the slaughter of Christians in Armenia, the arms being supplied by Israel, that the media turns the other way and says, oh, okay, but what about what's happening in Israel? So you know what I'm asking for? Actual equality, okay? Because it seems like this is like a special category, the special relationship that we have. I'm a Christian first, okay? And so my concerns are going to be with what's happening to Christians all around the world, because it is us. We are the #1 most persecuted religion in the world. And all Christians watching this need to realize the time is now to start speaking up, because we have been silenced about the things that are happening to us for a very long time. In
your own Bible, if you're a Christian, it literally says that those who bless the Jewish people will be blessed, and those who curse the Jewish people will be cursed. That is a statement in your Bible. And so if you want to say that you're a Christian first, then you should be supporting the chosen people, the Jewish people in the Holy Land. And actually, Jesus, or Jesus, was a Jew. And so the idea that you have this sort of like crazy anti-Semitism, or you're not supporting Israel because you're Christian first. You're not supporting Israel because you're Christian first. That's an oxymoron. That doesn't make any sense. That you should be supporting Israel because you're a Christian first.
Media is very clearly not our friend. When there is wall-to-wall coverage of Christians being killed in Armenia, Christians being killed in Nigeria, and the treatment of Christians in America and all across the globe today, then you ask me if I will use my platform and I will use my voice to speak about what's happening in Israel. How about that?
Okay.
That's it. Okay.
Let's turn to, I would say, a less contentious matter, but it's not really. It's Kanye West. I interviewed him at length towards the end of last year. You've been pretty supportive of Ye, formerly Kanye West, even after he tweeted DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. He posted, I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. And you wrote on the social media site Parler, if you're an honest person, you do not think this tweet was anti-Semitic. I mean, I don't know.
Before she even gets into it, this is laughable. It is anti-Semitic. He does hate Jews. Now, the reason why he hates Jews can be because 1 or 2 Jews screwed him over. That doesn't give him an excuse for the fact that he does hate Jews. Now, being friends with that person after the fact, I understand that. Fine. You're good friends with them, whatever. Maybe you can go ahead and write, oh, this is why, instead of just saying, oh, an honest person doesn't view that as anti-Semitic. Why don't you just go ahead and say, this is why he said what he said. He's going through a lot right now, whatever. You could have just said that, as opposed to right away saying an honest person wouldn't view that as anti-Semitic.
Why would you conclude that? Because it seems to me it's a pretty brazen statement of anti-Semitism. Go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. How else could it possibly how else could it be construed?
Yeah, sure. I can tell you how else it can be construed, because this is one of the things that's fascinating. First, I'd like to point to how interesting it is that the entire world came down on Kanye West, canceled him, took away his contracts, made his entire family come out and make statements against him when he tweeted that he was going to go DEFCON 3 on some Jewish people, I think is what he wrote verbatim. And now we fast forward to today when Israel is literally going DEFCON 3 on Palestinians.
He didn't say some, he said on Jewish people.
Okay.
Yeah, she's trying to misquote that. At the end of the day, he said, DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. Now, he might be completely out of it in a messed up mental state. What she's going to now say is like, oh, it's, it's messed up how he got persecuted by, the Jews, and how basically if you say that about Palestinians, it's not so bad. You don't get canceled. Two wrongs don't make a right. Whatever you want to talk about, at the end of the day, he said what he said. If you can't just straight up condemn it, you have an issue.
Okay, sure. And now we fast forward to today when Israel is literally going DEFCON 3 on Palestinians, and those same media members seem extremely cautious in their language. So the tweet.
Oh, no, they're not exactly going DEFCON 3. Number one, the Jews were actually attacked on October 7th, and they're basically trying to avoid this happening again, and therefore they're trying to eliminate Hamas. And if they didn't want to only eliminate Hamas, why would they drop leaflets for Palestinians to move? Why would they warn them in advance of them bombing? Why would they literally evacuate 1 million people from Rafah in order to avoid civilian casualties? So DEFCON 3 on Palestinians? Not exactly, Candace.
Is actual death, but the actual bombs being dropped, for some reason, real violence is something that the media can get comfortable with. I'd like to point to that because now some time has passed. But to answer your question of how I could have said that statement, obviously, you understand Ye is my friend, and I understood what was happening in his life and what had caused him to say that. He said when he woke up, he was going to go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. He's talking about specific Jewish people in his life that he believed had been taking advantage of him. And he then produced, and for whatever reason, the media was not interested in covering it extensively, a tweet from one of those people, Harley Pasternak, threatening to put him on a Psych 5150 hold and to drug him, and so that his visits with his kids wouldn't be the same. How Harley Pasternak has not been chased out of Hollywood after threatening to drug someone and take their kids away is the question that you should be asking.
Yeah, all of this is irrelevant. You want to talk about one Jewish person that was messed up, talk about one Jewish person that was messed up. The guy literally said he loves Hitler. He talked about how he loved the different things that Hitler did. Now, if you're going to say that he was in a messed up mental state, fine. But then just fucking say that. You don't need to go ahead and talk about how, this Jewish person, that Jewish person. Just say he wasn't in the right state of mind.
Asking. Now, I was privy not only to what Harley Pasternak was saying to him, but also to what 4 other happened to be Jewish people were saying to him at that time. And I think
happened to be Jewish. Just that statement is like virulently anti-Semitic. Like, happened to be Jewish. Never mind.
I think what happened is that he snapped and he suddenly wanted to aggressively attack those individuals and basically say that he was tired.
Yeah, but Candace, none of that changes the fact that what he tweeted was clearly anti-Semitic. When you say, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, that is a statement of anti-Semitism, indisputably. The idea that you would be dishonest if you didn't see that for what it was, whatever the circumstances, whatever was going on behind the scenes, for a guy with his massive following, which I think we can agree was indisputably massive at the time, for him to state that in public on a social media platform was a brazen act of disgusting anti-Semitism. And all right,
just to be clear, I didn't tweet on Parler. On my podcast, gave a full statement saying that if we're being honest, you did not think that he was going to go kill some Jewish people. You didn't. And I think that if we're being honest...
Well, you said if you're an honest person, you did not think this tweet was anti-Semitic. I did think it was anti-Semitic. Everybody did.
Okay.
But you didn't. Why?
No, because I knew the backstory, so I had more information than the public had.
Yeah, but the statement is unambiguous. The statement had no clarification. It was unambiguous. It was clear.
Yeah, and then when he clarified, when he did try to clarify it, nobody paid attention. So can I ask you why did you try to book Harley Pasternak after you saw what he tweeted to Kanye?
No, I booked Kanye himself, and I interviewed him for 2 hours.
Yeah, but were you interested? That was thereafter when he showed.
All right, enough of that. I think that we can all agree that Candace Owens hates Jews, but she's very, very careful, and she's very, very good at basically slipping through the cracks with her words. She'll never outright say that she hates Jews, but she hates Jews. She hates Israel. She hasn't really presented any facts other than the emotional argument of, the Israel is committing a genocide and all this stuff with the Palestinians, when in reality they've done everything to prevent committing a genocide. But other than that, with the anti-Semitism side, she definitely was either wronged by Jews or something happened to her with Jews. But yeah. So for more, go to JewishUncensored.com and subscribe to @JewishUncensored. Subscribe to the channel. And finally, also, if you want to help us make more of these videos, go to buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. Let me know in the comments if you think that Candace Owens is an anti-Semite.